Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be covering the Places panel. Now the Places sidebar panel is located on the left hand side of the Google Earth interface. If you want to expand it so that you have more real estate, you can collapse the Layers panel and the Search panel just by clicking on their titles, which is going to collapse them. Now from within the Places panel we can manage all of the data that we either create or import inside of Google Earth. We can also do our exporting and importing of data from within the Places panel. Now, the panel is split into two sections. The first one is called My Places, and the second one is called Temporary Places. The difference between them is that any data contained under Temporary Places is going to be deleted upon exiting of Google Earth, whereas any data located under My Places is going to be retained even when you exit out of the application, so that when you open up Google Earth again, the data is still going to be there under the list of places. Now, like I mentioned, we can create any data from within the Places panel. Just by right-clicking on any folder or object, we can go under Add, and then we're going to get this drop-down menu that will allow us to create new folders, place marks, paths, polygons, models, and tours, import photos or image overlays, or create network links. All of those elements can also be created from within the Add menu. So if I expand the Add menu, we can see all of them here, together with shortcuts for most of them. We can also export out data from within the Places panel just by right-clicking on any object and going under Save Place As. This will allow us to export it out to a location on our hard drive, and we can give it a file name, and we can choose between KMZ and KML. KMZ is simply an archived form of KML, so if you save files out as a KMZ, they're going to have a smaller file size. KMZ can also contain images, whereas KML cannot do that, so if you're exporting out data that contains images or has images embedded into objects, then if you export it out as a KML, those images are going to be exported out separately. Whereas if you export out as a KMZ, everything is going to be contained within that one KMZ file. So in some instances, KMZ can be more convenient file format if you're intending to save data and send it out to other people. However, some applications may not be able to read KMZ files because they may not understand how to read the archive. So in those cases, if you're sending data to someone else or you're intending to use it in other applications, you may want to export out as a KML. On the bottom left corner of the Places panel, we have a couple of buttons. The first one is a spyglass, which is going to give us access to this search field. If we type a keyword here, then Google Earth is going to look for any files that we may have under our list of places that correspond to that keyword. We can also access the search field just by pressing the command Ctrl+F on the keyboard, and now we can start typing in the search field. For instance, let's say that I type the word access, and this is going to locate any folders or files that correspond to that keyword. There are also a couple of arrows to the right side of the search field. We can use those to sort through the list of files that we have. The button to the right of the spyglass is the transparency slider. I can use this slider to adjust the transparency of any object that I have selected under the list of places. So let's say that I want to select this road line here. I may go search for it under the list of places manually, but this may take a while, especially if I have hundreds of objects, and if I haven't named them properly, then I may not even be able to use the search function. So another convenient way by which we can select objects under the list of places is to simply click on them in the viewport. Now, if you just left click on the object, it's only going to highlight any folder in which the object is located in. But then we will have to expand that folder out and then click on the object again, which may just highlight another folder that the object may be contained in, and continue to repeat this process until we finally reach that object under all of these folders. A much faster way of locating any object would be to right-click on it instead of left-clicking, and then choosing to either rename it or choosing to open up its properties. So if I choose to rename this object, is going to immediately locate it and expand any folders as necessary until it reaches that object and highlights it. Now with the object selected, I can use the transparency slider to adjust its opacity, and if I push it all the way to the left, we're going to make that object fully transparent. This is the exact same function that we have under the properties of objects. So if I right click on this path and go under its properties, I can find the transparency settings under the style and color tab under the opacity value here. So if I set this to 0, the object is going to be made fully transparent. Now from the places panel, we can also rearrange objects as we need to. For instance, let's say that I want to grab all of these paths here and move them to a separate folder. So I'm going to first of all select them just by left clicking on the first one, holding the shift button and left clicking on the last one that I want to select. And then I can just left click, hold and drag on them and move them to a new folder, for instance. We can also delete objects from within the places panel just by right clicking on them and choosing to delete. Now notice that we can delete multiple objects at the same time simply by selecting all of them and right clicking and choosing to delete them. We can also just press the delete button on the keyboard and we're going to be prompted for confirmation. If you say yes, you're going to delete them. Like you already saw, we can also rename objects just by right clicking on them and choosing to rename them. We can also just right click on them directly in the viewport and choose to rename them. There's also a shortcut that you can use to rename objects, which is Ctrl, Alt and R. We can also use the Places panel to copy objects. Let's say that I want to copy this entire drawing folder. I'm just going to select it, right click on it and choose to copy. Alternatively, I can press the Ctrl and C command on the keyboard. Then I may want to make a copy of it under the temporary places folder. I can just right click on that and choose to paste, or simply press Ctrl and V on the keyboard. Now, if you have a folder that contains a bunch of data that you want to remove, but you don't want to delete the folder itself, you can choose to delete just the contents within that folder by right clicking on it and choosing to delete contents. So if I do that, I'm going to be prompted for confirmation. I can click on yes or just press the spacebar to accept. We can also rearrange any objects within folders by sorting them in alphabetical order. So let's say that I want to sort all of these folders under the main drawing folder in alphabetical order. I can right click on the drawing folder and choose to sort objects under it from A to Z. Another really useful thing that you can do from within the Places panel is to save snapshot views. This will allow you to save certain camera perspectives. For instance, let's say that I want to save a bunch of perspectives of this project. Maybe this will be the first perspective I want to save, and I want to save this perspective to the access roads specifically. So I'm going to right click on the access roads folder and choose to create a snapshot view. Then I'm going to change the camera angle to create another perspective. Maybe I want to save this one specifically to the headlands folder. I'm going to right click on that folder and choose to snapshot view, and maybe another perspective that I want to save to the offsets folder. Now I can switch between these perspectives just by double clicking on any folder or file that I saved the perspective to. So I'm going to click on the access roads, and this is going to switch us to our first perspective, then to the headlands folder, and finally the offset folder. This could be very useful if, for example, you want to save out certain camera perspectives so that when you're saving out images in series, you can track the development of your project over time consistently. And now finally, we can talk about the temporary places and the My Places. Now, like I mentioned, any data that is contained under temporary places is going to be lost if you exit out of Google Earth. For instance, I'm going to create a new folder under temporary places and call this project. Now, if I try to exit out of Google Earth, it's going to prompt me saying that I have unsaved items under the temporary places folder. Would I like to move them to the My Places folder so that they're going to be retained as permanent files? If I want to do that, I can click on save. If I don't want to, I can discard. And if I want to exit out of this entire process and not exit out of the application, I can choose cancel. You can also move any files manually just by dragging them from the temporary places under the My Places section. Or alternatively, you can just right click on them and choose to save them to My Places. This is different from Save Place As, which, as you saw, allows you to export data out to KMZ and KML. If I choose to save them to My Places, the project is going to be automatically moved under the My Places section. So now if I exit out of Google Earth, the file is going to be retained. And if I open up Google Earth again, I'm going to still find it under the list of places. And this just about covers it for the different uses of the Places panel. Thank you for watching and see you in the next session.